for Garfield fan art on the internet before things start to get strange, like Garfamon, a
Why are his eyes on his balls?
blog in which one intrepid Garfield artist has been redrawing.
Why is his face on his dick? What the internet did to Garfield. Fellas, I'm not gonna lie, I'm excited. Y'all been telling me to watch this for a minute and I ain't gonna lie to y'all, bro. But like, I haven't found the right amount of time, cause bro, this is an hour and 20-minute long video. I'm not gonna yap a lot this entire video. That's a lie. Y'all know me. But bro, get y'all's popcorns ready, goodie. Get y'all's feet out. Get y'all some good eats, bruh. You know, get ready to watch Peak. This is done by Super Eye Patch Wolf. And fellas, before we start anything, let me just remind y'all, happy Men's Mental Health Day, bruh. And a happy LGBT Pride Month, gang. We love everybody on the Hoodydude channel, except Namor mains or Marvel rivals. Real talk, if you're a Namor man right now and you're kind of contemplating on doing it or not, use this video as a, yeah, do it. No, I'm playing. But fellas, let's get straight to it, gang!
Garfield is a daily newspaper comic strip starring the iconic orange cat of the same name, as well as his owner, Jon Arbuckle.
His last name? I never knew his name was Arbuckle. I knew his name was Jon. Only reason I knew about his name was Jon was because I know about Garfield, right? I think I've seen like a few clips of it on like TikTok or IG Reels or some shit. That's all I know. I know Garfield, and he said something like, "I'm hungry, Jon." And like, you know, he's like this fucking massive monster cat, whatever the fuck. I did not know his name was Arbuckle. Jesus, what a dude, he got bullied a lot, bro. Huh.
Relatable, surly, and adorable, Garfield was based off the childhood memories of his creator, Jim Davis.
So hungry.
And in the
It's really one of these videos, and I kind of like it.
40 years since we first met this lasagna-loving rascal, Garfield has become a global phenomenon.
What language is this? Garfield Soroku Daleko. Dude, it's just a slur. I just insulted a whole fucking demographic of people.
Yearly merchandising sales at an estimate.
I'm all for everybody expressing their hobbies, and this is no different. But like, I'm just thinking about like, if you are in a talking stage with someone, right, or you're just getting to know someone, right, and you pull up to their crib and you just see all this, what is y'all's immediate reaction? Not just with Garfield too. I'm talking about anything like majorly specific. For example, like LeBron, Spider-Man, fucking Naruto, DBZ, anything. If you pull up to like, I don't know, Fine Shit's crib or some shit, bro, and the house is like this, I ain't gonna lie, what's y'all's reaction? Also, how do you maintain everything? Like, I never got collectors. How do y'all make sure none of this doesn't get, like, all dusty and stuff? Because no way y'all use every single one of these, like, pieces of memorabilia, right? Is that a Garfield phone? Are there Garfield condoms? I look you. Hold on. Garfield condoms. No fucking way. No, sorry. Okay, I knew about South Park condoms. Don't ask. I got weird friends. But, bro. Oh, my God. My fault for the burp, bro. There's a Garfield condom. All right, fellas. Add in that to my cart real quick.
Estimated.
The world is going to.
Is that Smile Dog, but in cat form?
I've been covering
This is lower accurate fucking orange cats, dude. It's not even Garfield specific.
fandoms for a little while now. And what I enjoy about doing this is how when you stare at a fandom long enough, you begin to get this very distorted yet very honest.
Dude, don't remind me of the Sonic fandom, bro. Holy shit, I hate gooners. God, I hate lustful gooners, bro. Ruining everything they touch. I wonder, who would win in a fight? Super Eye Patch Wolf or the Prime My Hero Academia fandom, gang?
Reflection of its source material, the heart of The Simpsons, the descent of Sonic, the magnitude of Undertale. But then
Undertale Mistress, yay!
there's Garfield. Believe me when I say, what Garfield has become on the internet is the most bizarre fandom I've ever encountered. And I'm not even talking about Garfield porn. Totally that as well, and yes,
Like, dude, why? Why? You have these talented artists, dude. They can make anything they want. How do you know you can draw this? Let me get this shit off my face. What the fuck?
far more bizarre.
What the fuck? Okay, dude, like, how do you know you can draw shit like this? How do you figure it out? How? Do you just get curious one day? Like, I'ma just draw. Let me get creative. No, Spider-Man. No cute, amazing landscape. No, bro. Fuck.
Or slash Alzheimer's Group is a subreddit of 50,000 people reposting the same Garfield comic over and over and over. Each member role-playing like this is the first time they've seen it. Relax John
funny.
is an 8-part animated series in which a morbidly depressed John Arbuckle is dragged into a frightening alternate reality as he is subsumed by a demonic Garfield.
Huh.
I'm sorry, John. Actually, Jesus, no, we're not ready for I'm sorry, John.
Oh shit, we gotta build our way up to it, dude.
UFC 316, but
Shout out Sean O'Malley.
on ESPN
Are what you say.
plus.com/PPV.
A superstar. Watch this game be hot dick.
But maybe in like an hour. And maybe you've noticed the runtime for this video and are asking, how could I possibly spend this much time on an idea that the subtle lowering of my father's eyebrows as I explained it to him communicated to me was something he considered a profound waste of time. Oh god, I was meant to make a video about Berserk this year. But
choosing Garfield over Berserk, in my opinion, should be a federal offense. But Super Eye Patch Wolf, you are amazing, so I'll let it slide.
I got lost.
In the field.
Lost in Garfield. God, I hope it's worth it. But the answer is I have looked deep into
You messed up, John. Why is he buff?
Garfield, and I have seen things horrible, frightening, and beautiful, including what is to me, and I'm serious here, the greatest piece of fan art ever created.
What is worthy of such a title, Mr. Wolf?
I would like to show it all to you. So
POV occult. I feel like I'm about to get inducted into like Scientology, dude. I'm about to get fucked.
join me on this long and strange journey as we take our first step and ask a question. How the fuck did we get here from a cartoon cat who likes lasagna?
Well, to be fair, it is the internet, and there's like Rule 34 of everything. Why? Because gooners are like roaches. They never die.
Or, to put it another way, what is Garfield?
Okay.
So, I want to be honest here.
Oh, Super Eye Patch Wolf, you've never been more attractive to me. No, I'm playing.
In that, unlike the other fandoms I've covered for this channel, I've never really been that into Garfield. That's not to say I dislike Garfield, it's just, no, I'm not doing this. I do not need to humiliate myself for your amusement. That's not
To be fair, I don't. God damn, you kind of jet. But like, I'm not gonna hold you, bro. I low-key lost my train of thought, dude. Give me the field.
Say I dislike Garfield, just that I was never really into him as a kid, and that hadn't changed up until this video.
Okay.
And so my first call was to go looking for articles on the appeal of Garfield. But what I found was kind of the opposite. Multiple headlines and videos about how
Garfield isn't funny. It was never supposed to be. What the fuck? Fucking hater or I joiner.
Garfield is not funny and even was never meant to be. How Jim Davis is a marketing man first and the comic was just intended as a vessel to sell merchandise. And after reading a lot of Garfield, and trust me, I read a lot of Garfield.
Average STEM major. Average Warhammer historian.
I actually disagree. I think this is a fairly cynical mischaracterization of Jim Davis and can be
He
traced
looks so
back
nice.
to a single quote he gave 40 years ago and is not really reflective of the dude of whom I have watched and read many, many interviews, who is the kind of person who still talks about wanting to make the whole world laugh with a single joke.
He's such a nice guy. Man, fuck these hating ass journalists, dude. Motherfuckers think they're Clark Kent or some shit. I ain't gonna lie, bro. It was never funny, actually. I hate that crowd. I hate the studded switch-up crowd when it comes to whatever things. It could be the funniest shit on earth. I don't know what's funny. I don't fucking know. Humor's subjective. Me! No, I'm just and then all of a sudden, like, after years of like, longevity of people, like, the general consensus of it being funny, you have that one stupid fuck, right? Comes out of nowhere. Actually, I don't think it was ever funny. And then you got a bunch of other sorry sacks of shit. Ah, you're right, buddy. It was not funny. It wasn't funny, actually. Like, why are y'all hating? Why the switch up? No wonder y'all jobless. No wonder y'all pores is pouring right now, and y'all face looks like a fucking connect the dots. It looks like a constellation on your forehead, and you worried about someone being funny. Could he get a job? Go on Indeed. Get a LinkedIn. Motherfuckers be jobless, bro. Be jobless and horny.
But if I'm right about this, then
Ka-chunk.
why do so many people find Garfield unfunny? And that being the case, how has it survived for 40 years?
This is an orange
I'm
cat.
going to be very generous with my interpretation of Garfield, but I think it's important to do that because we need to understand the appeal here. And while I am not going to defend the comedy in Garfield,
Sometimes when you're down in the dumps, way down in the dumps, you find a cookie. You know, they might have had a point about you, old Jim. I ain't gonna lie, this is... it just made me laugh.
as we shall see later, I find 0.104% of Garfield comics funny. I do
fuck?
think, however, it's worth
Field goal percentage of doom, dude. Buddy healed after I put the parlay on him. I fucking lost all my money.
looking at the reasons why Garfield's humor gets such a polarizing reaction from people. Jim Davis's previous comic before Garfield was Norm the Gnat, which ended in 1975. He then spent 3 years doing, well...
I wish we would know, but we got a fucking ad. You know, hold on, where is it? Where is it? Bitch! Get the fuck out my face.
Nothing
The fuck?
before beginning Garfield in 1978. And to give that date a little
Jesus, they had a fucking glow up.
context, that is not this decade or the one before
Let's
that.
be Garfield was made in the 70s?
That, or the one before that, or the one before that, or the one before that, but the one before that.
In the fucking late 70s?
Barring the old gods of media like Mickey Mouse and Peanuts, Garfield has been around longer than practically any relevant character in pop culture today. And you can imagine this lazy, rude, anti-authority cat being a little more outrageous in the late 70s than he is today. In the same way The Simpsons and Sonic the Hedgehog would have seemed wild and countercultural in their day before it's slowly becoming mainstream,
Yeah.
that's exactly what happened to Garfield. We are just not old enough to remember it. And Jim Davis has even talked about this in interviews. That said, I don't think the appeal of Garfield is its humor. I think it's Garfield. And what
What, the relatability?
I mean by this is that we all want to be Garfield.
He's cooking. Hold on.
Please don't click off the video. I promise I have a point to make here.
No,
Think of
we'll be
everything you
curious.
consider imperfect about yourself. Physical, mental, emotional, whatever. Any perceived flaw that makes you feel shame. Now,
All right, what are y'all's flaws? Let's name them. Let's go deep in this bitch. All right, fellas. All right, I know we're all strangers, but let's share our deepest, darkest secrets with one another. That's not deep enough, pussy. I'm waiting. Come on, you can share something, buddy. Pussy.
imagine an alternate version of yourself where those flaws still existed, but you just accepted them. You are in perfect harmony with who and what you are, and that's it. And well,
It's a good thing, isn't
that's Garfield. Garfield is lazy, he's gluttonous, he's selfish, and people constantly make fun of him for being fat.
it? So it's relatability. He's making fun of fat Redditors. Okay. We're not making fun.
But
Not fully.
he doesn't give a shit. He is perfectly content in who and what he is, and any of his perceived flaws are other people's problems, not his. And that is some seriously aspirational levels of confidence. But the real genius of the character is he also has all these little traits that allow us to see ourselves in him.
So relatable.
Garfield hates Mondays. He likes coffee. He loves lasagna. He dislikes spiders, loves to sleep, and resents authority. These are all very general, but what that means is that no matter who you are, there's probably something
That you
in
relate to. Okay, so it is relatability. Okay. That makes
Garfield
sense.
you're going to be able to
That's
relate
genius as
to.
fuck, though.
And that relatability, combined with his more aspirational quality, creates this simple but massively appealing cocktail of a character. And I think it's the strength of that appeal that's let Garfield survive for 40 years. And I just want to note here that for as
Oh, that's cute.
messed up as things are going to get this video, there is a lot of really cool and wholesome Garfield fan art from
That's
people
cool
who
as
just
shit.
earnestly enjoy Garfield's comic and his world. One standout being the fan comic John, which tells the story of an older John Arbuckle rediscovering his love of art and cartooning, and it's just this super cute and endearing take on these characters.
That's so cool.
Now, granted, you
Oh.
don't have to spend that long looking for Garfield fan art on the internet before things start to get strange, like Garfamon, a
Why are his eyes on his balls?
blog in which one intrepid Garfield artist has been redrawing
Why is his face on his dick? My go Blaziken, dude. Mudkip. You know, this is proof that originality is still a thing, dude.
the entirety of
Torchic.
Pokemon as Garfield, and I don't know how many there are because my browser crashes before I hit Gen 1. But what I think's really interesting about Garfamon is it shows
There's shirts. My life, my choices. I'm not gonna lie, if I'm a boss for a company, and then an employee walks in wearing this shirt, you're getting fired right where you stand.
how iconic and malleable Garfield's visual design is.
The legendary Suicune. They got Suicune. Is he still updating this shit? Is Incineroar in this bitch?
Meaning Garfield's visual design is recognizable enough to be
God, Hitman
be
League.
twisted into basically anything and still read as Garfield. This will become horrifyingly relevant later.
What the
But it's not
fuck?
just Garfield's character design that applies to, but also the comic itself. Garfield's comic was a big part of his spread, designed to be as simple, timeless, and consumable as possible. Each one is entirely self-contained and rarely, if ever, touches off current events. And since even the early days of the internet and social media, people have been taking these comics and changing them. Something that's possible because of how simple a formula they work off, with each comic following the same 3-panel structure. The first panel establishes the scenario. It is the morning and John and Garfield have just woken up. The second panel is the setup. Garfield is in an unusually good mood. And the third panel, the punchline. Garfield is in a good mood because he drinks too much coffee. With the exception of the longer Sunday comics, this is how Garfield works. And just like the character himself, that simplicity was critical in letting as wide an audience as possible understand and enjoy Garfield.
That's nice.
But it's also that simplicity that made the comic so infinitely memeable. It is shockingly easy to make your own Garfield comic from splicing together different establishment, setup, and punchline panels.
So that's the genius of it, though. Do you think Jim Davis planned this? Was an elaborate mastermind and dedicated, wanted a pursuit of relatability, bro. Because Garfield might be the ultimate representation of relatability, being able to create your own comic strips, being able to relate to, like, the character itself of hating the Mondays, him being fat, not giving a fuck, hating authority. You think Jim Davis might be a genius, dude.
And you can even try this yourself with the random Garfield comic generators.
I did not know such a thing existed.
And it's that malleability that's led to scores of popular online trends, such as replacing the last panel of a Garfield comic with an image of Garfield smoking a pipe and an unusual
Do you think everyone has a purpose? Absolutely, Garfield.
amount of these still work. But my personal favorite is the same, except the final panel now being Garfield being flung from a window. However, in time, people also got much weirder than that. For example,
Well, at least I wish we could know the examples, but we got Ariat. I don't know. Let's see what Ariat has to say, fellas.
When you think work, you think boots.
I guess.
You think boots, you think ending the day with the same number of toes you started with.
Whatever, dude. Fuck off.
silent movie Garfield. Garfield with one extra beat panel. Garfish.
Ooh.
Garfield with pixel art from that one really bad Garfield game that never released outside Japan.
I was not aware something like that existed.
Garfield, but the drawing keeps getting lazier.
Looks like my drawings.
Multiple choice Garfield.
Ooh.
Garfield, except all the comics from 1978 are color averaged together.
Oh.
Real life Garfield.
Yeah, this looks fun to do with your cat. Oh, it's a stuffed animal. Imagine seeing your dad in these photos.
Uncomfortably close Garfield.
Oh.
Garfield devolves into noise.
Oh.
Two Garfields. Polarized Garfields, you get the idea.
No, I think you need to keep going. What's the most obscure one, the most niche one, the most creative one? What is the most creative in the world full of creative ones?
So, Garfield is this iconic, appealing character communicated through this simple but infinitely consumable and recreatable medium. And I think this does go away in helping us understand the existence of something like
Wait, what?
medium.
Wait, what did it say? Hold on.
Go away in helping us understand the existence
After my grandson left, I see they left this funny cat comic as a surprise. It's a
something like or/al.
This comic literally had me in stitches. Has anyone seen it before? Dude, this subreddit, it's funny as fuck.
Alzheimer's group. Well, there is something undeniably cruel about this subreddit. I'd be lying if I said I didn't think there wasn't something interesting and
Kind of fucking funny, dude.
even a little poetic here. The idea that someone's final tether to their own reality is something as simple but recognizable as a Garfield comic strip.
It's funny how it's someone's last memory, dude. They're on their fucking deathbed. The Reaper's on its way, dude, calling your name like a goddamn like crazy ex. And what the fuck? Scared my ass. And like your last thought is like your family, your friends, the things you accomplished, the things you didn't accomplish, how you enjoyed life. And then as you close your eyes and draw your last breath, the last image you see is a fucking Garfield comic you found funny while at work. Life is truly poetic.
And the tragedy of when even that too starts to fade. However, this still doesn't take us any closer to understanding.
Like, imagine walking in on your child drawing this. Like, not to say this isn't phenomenal artwork. It is. That's not the point. But, like, I would be terrified as fuck if I walked in, right, and my child is drawing shit like this. Again, not to deny the brilliance in the fucking artwork and the penmanship. This fucking shading is phenomenal. But, like, I would be mortified, dude.
Why Garfield on the internet is so... And I think
Iconic.
a real easy
Cool.
the answer here
That's
is
actually
it's
really
just
cool.
the absurdity of making such depraved art out of something so simple and everyday.
And fucking stupid, dude.
But as you may be able to tell from the remaining runtime on this video, I disagree.
Jesus.
I think there's genuinely something darker and stranger at play here.
Sorry, tomorrow I'm turning 23. Don't get me wrong, I love birthdays. But why do so many of them have to be mine? Hashtag relatable.
And I'm not even talking about the official Garfield's very occasional descent into something weirder.
What the fuck?
I'm talking about a darkness that lies at the heart of every Garfield comic strip.
What?
And to start to unravel what that is,
Okay.
I want to talk about the 28th of January 2008.
Wait, there's a specific date? Dude, Garfield did 9/11. Dude, imagine every terrorist attack was due to Garfield's own doing.
When 27 very strange Garfield-themed videos all simultaneously appeared on a previously...
Is the dog twerking and Garfield shaking off the twerk? Cool. I wonder how many children got exposed to these videos and just got fucking scarred for life or became like horror enthusiasts. The duality of it all is truly amazing.
unknown YouTube channel. The kind of incredible thing about Lasagna Cat now is how weirdly ahead of its time it was. This was 2008 and the term meme was still years away from becoming something people actually said.
That shit was in 08?
And yeah,
I was fucking 4.
Lasagna Cat made memes of Garfield comics, but then became memes of themselves before you had even finished watching the video. And what I mean by this is that each video of Lasagna Cat is broken into 3 sections. The first is a live-action recreation of a Garfield comic. The second, the actual comic on which the first section was based. And the third, and by far strangest section, would take the footage of section 1 and change it. So this
Yeehaw!
would become this.
Yeehaw!
Music video
Cool.
parodies, video game references, 2008 internet humor. Lasagna Cat was taking Garfield comics and contorting them into all kinds of strange things, but tantalizingly, underneath the
I
sheer
ain't gonna lie, we gotta respect my mans though. He kind of hitting that
Kinds
shit.
of
I know that's not relevant to the video, but look,
things, but
he's low key hitting that shit, bro. I'm not gonna lie, I might add this to my bag, bro. I might add this to my emote wheel, gang.
tantalizingly, underneath the sheer wackiness of it all, there was what felt like a very subtle disdain towards Garfield. There was something a little grotesque and uncanny about these shrunken actors with their sagging costumes and human hands.
Yeah.
Each skit ending with the same canned droning laughter that nearly highlighted the mundanity of these jokes.
Garfield, this is a diagram of the food chain.
He looks like he's off this, Garfield's off nitrous, dude. It's like Kanye.
You're here, and that's a mouse down there. Any questions?
Where's pizza?
This is probably what hell is, dude.
But the strangest part was how each video ended on a bizarre tribute to Jim Davis. This is one of the first really unusual things I noticed about the Garfield fandom. It has this kind of feverish obsession with Garfield's creator, Jim Davis. And I say unusual because in every other fandom I've covered,
There's like a spread in terms of like what they like, right?
I don't know if I remember a single instance of the creator of those
Or creator being, yeah,
properties
okay.
ever appearing in fan works, but Garfield is different. Over
It's fucking Gojo.
and over, Davis kept materializing in fan works, often in very strange ways, and to the best
Smite the non-believers, Jim. Build me a throne of their skull. Okay, that's funny as fuck. Smite the non.
of my knowledge,
Yes, master.
Lasagna Cat was the first instance of this happening.
So did a bunch of little kids watch this shit and was kind of ingrained on them to bring up Jim Davis? Maybe.
So, why? Well, if that was a question you asked in 2008, you'd be waiting a long time for an answer.
I feel like it's because it's kind of fucking funny. I'm not Jim Davis.
After the initial upload day of Lasagna Cat, the channel would go silent. Days would become weeks, weeks would become months, and months would become years.
Dude, Jim
And without
Davis got
a
him.
single update, Lasagna Cat began to fade into internet obscurity. Which is why it was such a shock when a full 9 years later, a new video appeared on the Lasagna Cat channel. ending with the text, telephone sex survey.
What the fuck? So you think they were actually done for real, but like they like some guy in the group chat said, "Hey fellas, I have an idea," and they all regrouped like it's the fucking Avengers, dude. They left their homes, their families, boom, booked it straight to the fucking like studio, dude. I really want to know what the group chat was looking like.
February 9th, 2017.
All right.
This was the beginning of a strange rabbit hole of videos that led 2 weeks later to a bizarrely high production trailer that claimed if you called a toll-free number and left your name and the number of sexual partners you'd had, a Garfield web series would return. 2 weeks later, and boom. Just like they had 9 years ago, 11 new videos were simultaneously
What the fuck?
uploaded to Lasagna Cat. And while they were similar in format to the old videos, they were also so different. The first of the new videos begins as any typical Lasagna Cat would, parodying an old comic where Garfield steals Jon's pipe. But what's waiting for us at the end of the video isn't a re-splicing of the footage from section 1 that we're used to, but a man claiming that this simple Garfield comic transformed his entire existence as he obsessively analyzes every tiny part of the comic in excruciating detail, his examination gradually expanding outward to the immortal nature of art and mimetic culture and its ability to transcend humanity and even the laws of space and time. And this goes on for an entire hour, and it might just be the best video on the internet. And
What if he just has dementia? Like, I low-key want to watch it now. Hold on. Hoodydude detour. We're not going to watch all of it, obviously. We're not going to watch an hour of a man explain. I mean, low-key, if it's... What happened? What did Corey do? God damn it, Corey. I'll watch it later. But hold on. Guy explaining Garfield, whatever the fuck. Or Lasagna Cat shit, whatever. Here it is.
Garfield says, and I quote, Sahib asks fish, paper is wet. Sahib asks cat, paper is holy.
How much did they pay this man, dude? Where did they find him off? Fiverr? Like, I mean, so where the fuck did they find him?
And somehow, this was just the beginning. Whereas the original end of video skits had that charming amateur with a green screen feel, what waited for us in the third act of these videos
okay.
now
Rack of videos.
were shockingly high production short films that transformed simple Garfield comics into these elaborate, surreal stories. Jokes about Odie getting a bag stuck on his head morphed into these strange tales of the bag-headed Odie becoming a fashion icon before taking his own life and being condemned by Garfield to a hell filled with demonic John Arbuckle chimeras.
Cool.
Bags where John uses the wrong shampoo would now be mutated into, well, this is what they would turn into, and I don't want to describe this. Those simple Garfield jokes were now being contorted to the bizarrest of extremes, contrasting the arguable mundanity of the original with this just wild insanity. And even more pronounced this time was that subtle malice towards Garfield. Each video still ending on those bizarre tributes to Jim Davis.
Did Jim Davis, like, fuck his mom or some shit? What the fuck?
But it's only in the final video ever uploaded to the channel that Lasagna Cat would reveal what it truly was.
What a god.
And that video was called Sex Survey Results.
What if Lasagna Cat was like the reverse Flash of Jim Davis? Like, imagine, the child of Lasagna Cat, like the father, created Garfield first. Like, have y'all seen Coco? And you know when the guy betrayed the other guy and had him killed? I forgot. But you know what I'm talking about? What if it was like that? And so this guy's like plotting a revenge was all this? Lo could be genius.
Sex survey results begins with Jon Arbuckle entering his living room and sitting down to
God, his production is amazing.
read the paper, but he hears a knock on his door and
Who's there?
to which he answers, revealing a strange white mannequin.
Cool.
The mannequin giving its name and number of sexual partners.
Hey, my name's Garrett Smith, and I have had exactly 0 sex partners.
It's cool, Garrett. It's cool.
Before the scene freeze frames and pulls out to reveal a near identical scene, and we begin again, but now with Garfield instead of Jon. The same events play out, only with a new piece of audio detailing someone else's name and number of sexual partners. And we cycle again, but now with Odie. And then again, back to Jon, and then again, and again, and again, and again, and again. And this continues for nearly 5 hours.
The dedication is amazing, dude. I'm being so serious.
All of which I have watched, most of which I did live on stream.
Watch all of it?
Watching sex survey results in its entirety is exhausting.
I wonder if someone ever came up, hey, this is Jon Smith, 200 sexual partners.
An exercise in mind-numbing repetition. But I think there's something kind of important in that experience.
Imagine there was no symbolism. They just wanted to waste everyone's time because it'd be fucking funny.
You're listening to all these different recordings of people communicating what is
Hugh
to
Johnson,
many
69.
a pretty sensitive piece of information, and it's
Andrew,
weird
6.
and even a little uncomfortable. But soon,
Noah,
you just
too many, lol. Fucking liar.
numb to it.
Noah, you have AIDS. You have the glow stick dick, buddy.
After an hour, it stops feeling weird, and after hours, it stops feeling like anything.
Joe 7, I think that's right. All right, Joe, it's 7? What do you mean you think that's right? What you do, Joe?
Because anything repeated enough times loses all meaning. Not
I mean, not. I guess anything repeated. What's something that can be repeated enough times to never lose its meaning? Transformers 1.
like a comic strip running day after day after day after day after day for 40 years. And it's at that point when that feeling is at its strongest and you are completely numb to whatever is happening, that Lasagna Cat hits you with what has to be one of the most infamous and shocking pieces of footage that is allowed to exist on YouTube.
What the fuck?
At this point, the scene has descended into night. The mannequins have begun to take strange and grotesque shapes, and Jon answers the door one final time, only to be faced with
Jon Arbuckle, 2.
Jon smashed 2 people? Oh god, is it a pets? Is he one of those? Is he in the bestiality, dude? Oh god.
Jon Arbuckle, 0.
What the fuck?
And immediately, this second Jon ages about 30 years. This new, older Jon Arbuckle now wandering the streets alone, frightened and confused. He finds a dried out husk of a cat, which teleports him to a massive ravine, where he encounters a strange naked shaman who attacks him before teleporting behind him and whispering silent words in his ear, before Jon collapses in.
This reminds me of like Transformers 2 Revenge of the Fallen. So they can do this shit, but when I say a little bit too many naughty words, my fucking shit gets age restricted. Okay, go fuck yourself, YouTube. No,
into a pile of worms and dirt. The shaman roars, and we hard cut to a young girl screaming in the bathroom of a public school. We're given extreme close-ups of her birthing a stillborn child, and she steps back and stares down in horror before saying something in Polish.
To dziecko nie jest moje. To dziecko jest coś z ciemności.
Cool.
Ja porodziłam ludzkie przekleństwo.
She leaves, and we get one final shot of the child, but now a ginger cat is perched beside it.
What, she fucked Garfield?
We cut, the cat is now gone, and the baby opens its eyes
Wait, okay.
before the screen is filled with a block of bright orange. Well,
So, did she fuck the field?
that was a nightmare.
Yeah.
But I actually think that Lasagna Cat has something really interesting to say. But to get there,
What though? I genuinely think it's just shock value shit. There's no way there's like symbolism in this. I don't know. Hold on.
we're gonna have to
He
do
might be cooking.
a little legwork. Earlier in this video, we asked, what is Garfield? But now, I would like to ask, what is Garfield? Considering I'd had little history with Garfield, I knew to answer this, I would need to immerse myself in him, to
You know, what if that's how they get you?
understand the comic on an intimate level. And so, I committed to reading 400 Garfield comics. But not just that, I wished to study them. And so, I didn't just read Garfield, I collected data on Garfield. I noted every observation I had in a large Google spreadsheet. And through this, I established that Garfield was made up of roughly 11 different kinds of jokes, such as humor derived from the fact that Garfield is lazy/gluttonous, absurdist humor, relatable humor, other humor, which were either recurring jokes too sporadic for their own category, but mainly jokes about Garfield doing things a cat would do, the joke being that he's a cat,
Yeah.
or jokes about Garfield doing things a cat would
Wouldn't
not
do,
do,
yeah, wouldn't
the joke being he's a cat.
I mean, technically, one is considered motivation. Here, Garfield, the ball of yarn, grabs it. You're supposed to chase it. What's my motivation? Like, technically, isn't that supposed to be, like, couldn't that be considered relatable?
These are my least favorite.
I just say this. Just super eye patch was watching. Fuck, he's right. No, and like his forms just collapsed, dude.
Favorite kind of Garfield joke. I measured for a variety of other variables, such as the amount of fourth wall breaks,
Ow.
which was 4, or
Cool.
instances
Hey, Odie.
of Garfield becoming suicidal, which was 2, or how many times the comic made me laugh, which was precisely once, and
Wait, really?
it was this one. After many hours of collecting Garfield data, I sought to answer a single question that would surely help me understand Garfield, and by extension, Lasagna Cat. Well,
You think anyone has ever done this with like anything other than Garfield? Because I know someone else did this with like. You remember the whole Michigan Scout drama? I just saw like the documentary on Netflix. Has anyone done this to like Hoodydude videos? Have y'all done this to me? He made 90 POV jokes. 100 jokes at the expense of his viewers. 45 gay jokes. Is there like a Hoodydude document somewhere that I don't know about? Dude, probably on Reddit.
what was the most common type of joke in Garfield?
Just depression. It's suicidal, dude.
And when I tabulated the results, what I saw shook me. What was I looking at? This couldn't be possible. And I grew concerned. The 400 comics I had
What is
pulled
it?
from were a combination of every comic on the Twitter account Random Garfield, which algorithmically pulls 3 random Garfield comics every day, as well as this YouTube video ranking the top 100 Garfield comics.
The top 100 Garfield comic strips. Cool.
Perhaps this video was a mistake, its author's biases tainting my study,
That's
so
true.
I proceeded to read 200 more Garfield comics, chosen completely at random from Garfield's web archive. I tallied the numbers again and no, impossible. This time the results were even more pronounced. Was I
Wolf!
subconsciously selecting Garfield comics to affirm my own biases?
Nuts.
Couldn't allow this, and so I committed to reading an entire year of Garfield, each month being selected from 3 and 4 year intervals across Garfield's 4 decades,
Jesus Christ.
bringing my total number of read Garfield comics to 956. But then I was struck with an idea. What if I committed to reading every Garfield comic in existence? Then my data would be pure, complete, and indisputable. This is when I encountered a problem. When I sought out the estimated total number of Garfield comics in existence, that number was 14,000! But how was there that many? This video...
Well, to be fair, the Garfield, it's literally just 3 panels, right? I can see why. You know, Jim Davis probably just in his lab cooking.
Was already taking far too long, and at this point, I'd already spent several days reading Garfield comics, and yet somehow I had only consumed 6.83% of all Garfields.
Jesus, fuck. Okay, I was about to say.
In this video, the very concept of Garfield began to feel gargantuan and impossible, entirely beyond the grasp of my feeble mortal consciousness. I decided that reading 14,000 Garfield comics was not a realistic goal.
I mean, it is. But you gotta cut off a lot of friendships. So it might be worth it, dude.
I know some of you will consider this a failure.
I do.
This is Wix
Not
Studio,
playing. Oh my god.
built to meet any brief.
Shut up, Wix.
When your project calls for bold creativity, design...
Suck my nuts.
I am sorry.
Oh, it's
I
okay,
read
man.
up on sample sizes and learned that my current yield of Garfield comics will leave me with a margin of error of about 1.5%, and this is widely considered acceptable.
That's fine.
I sigh and proceed forward. I tally the final numbers and rank each strain of Garfield joke from 11 to 1. The results frighten me. I am now going to share this specific breakdown with you because I need you to see what I see. Before we begin, I want you to ask yourself a question. What do you think is the most common type of joke in Garfield?
I feel like it's gotta be no, he said suicidal was like 2, right? Fourth wall break.
And I want you to hold on to that
No, cause I barely see any fourth wall breaks. Relatability.
guess as we proceed.
Relatability,
down the list.
relatability.
At number 11, we have jokes centered around Irma, the local cafe owner, and how she's bad at running her business. These
Oh, just y'all.
jokes make up just 0.42% of Garfield.
Fuck you, Irma.
Just above that, at number 10, with 0.5%, were jokes based around Garfield's girlfriend Arlene. At number 9, with 1%, was humor derived from how much Garfield hates Nermal. At number 8, with 2.3%, is
Garfield hates
comedy
spiders?
conveying Garfield's hatred of spiders. At number 7, with 4.5%, was relatable humor.
Really?
This was the first major surprise to me.
Yeah.
I had assumed that a cat whose entire branding was built on one simple, relatable quote would have more relatable humor in its comic. I was wrong.
Is it suicidal?
It wouldn't be the last time. At number 6, at 4.7%, was whimsy derived from Garfield's abuse of Odie. At number 5, with 13.7%, was mildly surreal and absurdist humor. At number 4, with 16.8%, are jokes based on Garfield being lazy or gluttonous. And again, for obvious reasons, I was shocked not to see this further up the list. At number 3, with 17.4%, is other. These are the kinds of jokes I do not like. And at number
These are the kind of jokes I do not like.
2, with 18.8%, is a mystery category that I will reveal much later in the video for dramatic effects.
Just Garfield speaking Arabic.
Now, before I unveil number 1, I want to stop and ask you again, what do you think is the most common type of joke in Garfield?
Suicidal
At
one.
number 1, and by far the biggest shock on the list, was a category I never even would have guessed existed. And it's called John is Pathetic.
What?
John Arbuckle is 30 years old.
Damn!
He lives alone,
Sorry.
has no real friends outside his dog and cat, and is constantly lonely.
Oh God, it sounds like y'all. Male loneliness epidemic. Shut the fuck up. You're just a weirdo. Shut up, dude.
And these are all things that the Garfield
Like I
comic
always said that on Men's Mental.
takes joy in ridiculing. A typical Jon is pathetic gag works like this. Jon says he's not going to call women for dates anymore, that he's going to wait for them to approach him.
Oh, cool.
We see him waiting, and then we see him waiting what appears to be several months later.
Jesus Christ.
Jokes like this are very common, not just in how women find Jon actively repulsive, but in how he
Wait, hold on. What's Jon's game like? Yes, stamp collecting can be very rewarding. Ah! Help! Help! My dad is talking about stamps. Jon, I ain't gonna lie, you just sound boring as fuck. You got any no seasoning, no spice or nothing, Jon. You're not no nerd. You're not no. You gotta have something, Jon. You gotta have something that like stands you out, buddy. Like you gotta suck toes or some shit. You gotta do drugs. Be weird! Come on, Jon, there's gotta be something cool about you, dude. Pick up a hobby. Be a gooner or something. No, don't be a gooner. But, Jon,
he is
Jon,
pathetic
you're like,
and should be ridiculed. And you can see this in how the comic portrays his intelligence, his hobbies, his fashion sense, to even his physical strength and inadequacy in anything that could be considered remotely.
Poor Jon, he was hoping to run a marathon, but he passed out lacing his shoes. Come on, Jon. What do you think about my new suit? Yeah! My eyes. Hon, don't sugarcoat it. My date excused herself from the table and never came back. Excuse me, Jon. Maybe she got locked in the ladies' room while I stepped into the closet and laughed for a while. Jesus Christ. This is literally y'all, the average Hoodydude hater. This is like the average power scaler's life, dude.
Masculine. Across nearly 1,000 comics, I measured zero cases of Jon showing any admirable qualities. Meaning,
nothing?
Whereas Garfield is something to be aspired to, Jon is something to be laughed at. Even when Jon did find a girlfriend in Liz 28 years into Garfield's
Wait, is he Landon? Imagine, dude. Well, what are you going to order, Jon? Food? I always order food in a restaurant. Maybe I'll have the same. Let's go, Jon!
And only after fans begged Jim Davis to end Jon's loneliness.
They begged Jim Davis to end his... Oh my God. They asked Jon's God to end his... Okay, whatever.
He's still treated as this pathetic character. And I think there's something kind of sad about that. A person...
But no! Either it's sad, or you know what? Perseverance, gang! You gotta look at it this way. It depends on how you view things. You may view a pathetic loser, right? But I view a pathetic loser that didn't give up. And look, bro, look, you know what? He got Liz. Liz sent me home to change. You know why? Because that means she cares. Am I being delusional? Probably. But at the same time, you gotta think of it that way. If Jon Arbuckle hasn't given up yet, why have you?
Whose only purpose is to be ridiculed and to be trapped in that existence for 40 years. And where this gets even sadder is when you start to consider the comic from Jon's perspective. Across that same range of comics, I measured 156 instances of Jon displaying some kind of negative emotion or mental anguish, anger, depression.
Why am I always having to beg for this?
Lethargy. But if you're a casual reader...
My life stinks, Garfield, like a wet dog.
The comics, it might never feel like that, as whenever Jon does begin to sink into despair, Garfield is there to deliver a witty punchline and diffuse the tension. Okay. But here is where we start to get into the very strange nature of reality and Garfield. See, as the audience, as the readers of this comic, we can experience Garfield's thoughts through the visual device of thought bubbles. But critically, this is not the case for Jon. Across every Garfield comic I read, I didn't record a single instance of Jon ever directly reacting to Garfield's thoughts in a way that couldn't be explained by him intuiting Garfield's body language and expression.
Okay.
And that information is critical because it means the reality we are experiencing and the one Jon is experiencing are entirely different. And
God, it's even more sad.
This brings us to a question. What is it really like being Jon Arbuckle?
Dude, I would wish that on my worst enemy. That's another insult for the bag in case a motherfucker want to talk crazy to me and Marvel Rivals, Cuddy. I hope you grow up to be Jon Arbuckle, you fucking loser. Oh, John. O'Malley! You are what you say you are, superstar.
On the 13th of February 2008, a Garfield fan comic was uploaded to Tumblr, and it looked just like a regular Garfield comic, but with one critical difference.
What, no Garfield?
The first panel depicted Jon sitting alone with the dialogue, "I've done things in my life that I regret." The second panel shows nothing, just Jon, his remorseful silence unbroken. The final panel of the comic punctuated by...
Unironically, this is kind of funny. I've done things in my life that I regret. And he's just, I don't know. It's kind of funny in my opinion, I'm gonna lie.
Nothing. Just a slight shift in Jon's expression, like his regrets are washing over him. What this was...
What the fuck did Jon do? He took lives of innocent civilians and fucking in the Middle East, dude.
Was just a regular Garfield strip with one key difference. Garfield
just isn't there.
Had been removed.
Okay.
And because of the very specific way Jon and Garfield communicate, the comic still works. But whereas before Garfield's punchlines could distract us from Jon's misery, that's no longer the case. And this was the beginning of the bizarre and morbid webcomic.
I've called every girl I know. None of them will go out with me. These are kind of getting a little bit of a laugh out of me.
Garfield minus Garfield, which lets us experience the true crushing reality of Jon. And some of these comics are really haunting. There's one
so depressed. I'm so depressed. It's depressing. I think I'll go out and shoot myself.
in particular that is either very hopeful or very devastating, depending on your perspective, where Jon says, "We can't do anything about the past, but we can do something about the future."
There we go.
Before he just disappears.
Okay, he's right. It depends on how you look at it. This is my interpretation. Jon went out to go get a hobby. He went to go get a little bit of spice into him. Maybe he learned a new dance move, because now he can hit bachata. He knows the Ice Spice pose emote, bruh. Jon became a YouTuber. He became, I don't know. He became a reaction YouTuber. He became me.
Garfield minus Garfield was not the first instance of people removing Garfield from the comic to produce this kind of effect, but it was what popularized the idea online that there may be something very wrong with Jon Arbuckle.
I mean, I think they're right.
And over time, other fan works began to explore this in similar ways. Realistic Garfield, for example, conveyed similar themes by just replacing Garfield with a realistic cat who could not talk, as did fan comics like Arbuckle. Well,
sometimes I have to wonder, Garfield, where is life taking me? I guess Jon.
Animations like Meat Canyon's Lasagna brought the idea of Jon's fractured reality even further, depicting Jon as a frightening, delusional lunatic who holds his terrified victims captive and forces them to play the part of Garfield and Odie, as he warps back and forth between the Jon Arbuckle we know from the comics and something much darker. The reason all these pieces are important...
Honestly, I don't fucking know. Average Black Widow main.
important is that they show not only that there is something kind of...
Growing old is sad. So many dreams never to be fulfilled. I mean, that's all dependent on you, dick fuck.
...wrong with Jon Arbuckle, but also that is something that even in the early days of Garfield's online fandom, people picked up on. But where things get even stranger is when we look at this through the lens of what Jon Arbuckle was originally meant to be.
Ah!
Remember
There we go.
earlier when I said that Norm Nat ended in 1975, Jim Davis then spent 3 years doing nothing, and Garfield started in 1978?
Yeah.
Well, that was a lie.
Bitch! Nah, I'm playing.
But I framed it this way because for decades, that's what people thought was the truth. Listen to any interview in which Jim Davis speaks about the origins of Garfield, and he'll wheel out the same anecdote about the failure of Norm Nat because insects are not appealing characters.
Yeah, they're not.
And how that realization led to him looking at dog-centric comics like Peanuts and Marmaduke and saying
Peanuts!
to himself, what if I can create a similar character but for people who like cats? And thus, Garfield was born. Except this version of events also ignores the existence of Heathcliff, another surly, round, orange cat who predates Garfield by about 5 years, and this isn't relevant at all, but I just think it's funny. However, this telling is a lie, or at least not the full truth. Because you see, in the period between 1975 and 1978, there was a third comic. One that was only discovered in 2019 by intrepid Garfield historian
What a title.
Quentin Reviews, and this comic was simply titled Jon.
What?
There are two very strange things about Jon. The first being how closely it resembles Garfield. Everything from jokes to entire layouts are repeated across the two series. The only difference being that the main character here
Is Jon.
is Jon. Davis has spoken a lot about how Jon Arbuckle is an analog for him.
Oh no, Jimmy.
Both grew up on a farm, both live in Muncie, Indiana, and both are cartoonists. In fact, Davis originally wanted to use the character of Jon as a way to voice his frustration with the comic strip industry.
Oh, that's cool.
Which, if you look at where Davis was in his life when he first started writing this character, that tracks. Jon started just 2 weeks after the failure of Norm Nat, and you can feel that frustration in these early comics. In one instance, Jon even turning to the camera and saying how he thinks the content of this comic will land him in trouble with parents groups. And while
Okay, that's kind of funny. That's kind of funny.
Garfield still featured heavily, there were strips where he just didn't appear at all, with scenarios more focused on observational humor derived from the perspective
Obey my bachelor. I wonder who the centerfold is. Like Farai Kareem. Actually, that's kind of funny. I kind of fucking. That's a funny.
of a single
Jim, you gotta laugh out of me, Mr. Jim. That's a knee slapper.
man. But it wasn't long into the run when that started to change, with jokes more and more centering around Garfield and not Jon. The final strip of Jon being published on August 8th, 1977. The strip returning a week later, but now named Garfield. And within a year, Garfield would be syndicated on a national level, becoming the newer version of the comic we are all now familiar with. The second thing I find so strange about Jon is that while Jim Davis is often happy to laugh about the failure of Norm Nat, he barely ever speaks about Jon, and when he does, he only talks about it in the vaguest of terms, as if it was an idea in his sketchbook as opposed to an actual published comic.
I mean, at the same time, though, it was kind of like, it's kind of implied heavily that's kind of a footnote to Garfield. So when he talks about Jon, it's probably in reference to Garfield as well.
And I can't help but wonder if there's something to that. If the idea of a comic that was meant to be his own perspective, his own outlet on life, was a failure, overtaken by a fictional character he created.
That's a great point. Oh, Jimmy.
Even stranger, as Garfield went on, the similarities between Jim Davis and Jon Arbuckle began to disappear. Jon's job as a cartoonist practically vanishing as he devolves into the pathetic shell of a man we now know. And I'm not saying here that I think Jim Davis has some deep-rooted trauma that is manifesting in his daily newspaper comic. I genuinely do not think that. But I do think that this perspective adds a lot to this strange meta-narrative of a man overtaken by his own creation, abandoning the character he once embodied, and that character now being trapped in a life of existential suffering.
That's really fucking cool, I'm not gonna lie.
And here's the thing.
Okay.
If I was the only person who saw this, then there wouldn't be a story here. But I'm not. Let's go back to those last 5 minutes of Lasagna Cat.
At Arian, we know our...
Lasagna Cat ended 2 years before the discovery of Jon, but even then, what Jon adds to Lasagna Cat is kind of chilling. Like in that final scene, when that second Jon ages, he begins to bear a striking resemblance to
Jim Davis.
Davis, the person we now know Jon was originally meant to be. This new strange combination of Jim Davis and Jon Arbuckle, lost and clinging to the husk of a cat he should have let go of a long time ago, before he comes face to face with a version of Garfield that's become independent from him and is now strange and frightening.
And a man. What a dick!
Before Davis crumbles to earth, outlived by the very thing he created, which is immediately followed by the bathroom scene. And what's interesting here is that if we translate the girl's monologue from Polish, it reads, "This child isn't mine. This child is from the darkness. I've given birth to humanity's curse. My soul will be swallowed and vomited and swallowed again, forever." Sick joke, but no one is laughing.
Average Asmongold lore.
My blood will remain. Death isn't the end. I am in hell. This is hell. And while I
Jesus, man.
can't show it on screen,
Yeah.
in that final shot, the baby is shown wearing a blue shirt identical to Jon.
So Jon was like born to be a loser?
Arbuckles. For pieces of art like this, I think
Okay,
there is a lot of different interpretations that you can make. But for me personally,
That's really
when
cool.
Lasagna Cat is taken in totality, it becomes this bizarre statement on what happens when the things you create become more powerful than you.
I mean, if you created a thing and that had power, wouldn't that theoretically, by default, mean you have the power as well? Follow me. If I created something that has the power to overtake me, theoretically, as the creator of it, don't that mean I have the same power as well, since I created said thing? So that would mean the potential is still underlying within me, because I created the fucker. It's still based on me and my characteristics, my journey, my personality, my trauma, yada, yada, yada. It just kind of personifies it. So depending on the way you look at it, wouldn't that mean I'm therefore also powerful, and I'm therefore also outliving, not myself, but I'm also just, kind of immortal in that way? Because that shrapnel, that like vault, that's amalgamation of what makes me me is divulged into this character or creation I have made. So technically I'm immortal.
How Garfield
The Hoodydude channel will outlive me.
has become this semi-immortal entity, evolving past both Jon Arbuckle and Jim Davis.
Or maybe Jim Davis is the Garfield. He's one and the same.
And I mean this literally. Garfield is no longer even created by just Jim Davis. He has an entire team of people working under him who have become so adept at creating Garfield, their work is now indistinguishable from his. And Davis has even spoken about selecting a replacement so that Garfield can continue long after he's gone.
That means Jim Davis is never truly gone then.
But here's the thing. It's not just Jim Davis's reality that Garfield has had this strange effect on. It's also...
I wish we'd never know, because Disney Plus was just shoving down my fucking throat, dude. But it's Daredevil. Disney Plus has legends. Yes, like Kicking It and Jack Brewer. Shout out to the legend. Has iconoclasts. Has dreamers. Didn't Disney sue a guy because, he ate peanut butter and died? And they kind of didn't want to take blame for it because their fucking Disney Plus TOS said so? Man, fuck Disney.
Ours That might sound weird. I mean, how relevant could Garfield actually be in the modern era? Well, if I was to ask you which character out of Superman, Goku, and Garfield was the most syndicated, which would—
Hold on, what the fuck does syndicated mean? Hoodydude, editor, reports, publish a product. Oh, it's the number of, okay, so how much it was made. Okay, Ben.
would you pick?
I mean, I'm assuming it's a Garfield video, it'll be Garfield, all right? But my goat, Goku, and my goat, Superman, they're still goats.
And if you picked any answer other than Garfield, well, that was a strange choice given the subject of this video, but yeah, it is Garfield. After multiple decades in thousands of worldwide newspapers, Garfield has an estimated audience in the hundreds of millions. The New York Times had to change how its trade bestseller list was categorized after 7 of its 10 slots were occupied by Garfield. And today, his merchandising sales are at an estimated $800 million to $1 billion, and that is a lot to sell in 40 years. Oh, wait, that's every year? That's every fucking year. In products that twist Garfield into every conceivable form you can imagine.
I've not seen Garfield memorabilia ever, not ever, but like this year, dude.
For example, Garfield soap, Garfield air fresheners, Garfield cushions, Garfield teapots, a poster with Garfield as a ninja, Garfield headphone holders.
I ain't gonna lie, these are kind of hard. These are kind of hard.
Garfield thermostat, Garfield commemorative coin, Garfield digital alarm clock, Garfield's key hanger, Garfield piggy bank.
Wait, is that his dick? Hold on.
Garfield digital alarm clock, Garfield's—
What the fuck, dude? What? Oh, okay.
key hanger.
These designers knew what they were doing, dude.
Garfield piggy bank, Garfield Walkman, Garfield globe, Garfield—
The Garfield Walkman is kind of hard.
ice skates, Garfield boxing gloves, how to insult your friends, Garfield book,
I want it.
Garfield web browser, Garfield amusement park ride, Garfield personal massager, a Garfield mug, another Garfield mug, a much dumber Garfield mug, a Garfield mug that is even dumber than the first dumb Garfield
That shit is kind of hard. I'm not gonna hold you. Garfield whipping that fucking Corvette, dude. Kind of gas.
mug, existential Garfield, another existential Garfield, slightly too many Irish stereotype Garfield, Garfield waistcoat,
Jesus Christ.
unwell Garfield, Garfield gun, Satan Garfield, slime Garfield, child Garfield, illegal Garfield, another fucking Garfield mug, I don't know what this is, table Garfield, yet another table Garfield, Garfield prison tray, sex Garfield, far too large Garfield, nightmare Garfield, this horrifying bedsheet, the deeply cursed Garfield eats. What is this? Why? This Garfield jigsaw, which for some reason I can't quite pin down, puts the fear of God in me. In the mid-80s, a small coastal French village began to suffer an unusual phenomenon when plastic Garfield phones began washing up on shore. No one knew where they came from or why this was happening, but it continued for 3 decades, a mystery that was only solved in 2019 when the mysterious phones were traced back to a lost shipping container. We have so saturated this planet with Garfield merchandise that even the Earth herself has begun to reject it. But if that's the case, why don't we notice Garfield more? Why don't we see him everywhere in every day? And the answer is because they don't want us to. In the early 1980s, a production accident led to a Garfield plush with suction cups attached to its hands and feet. Paws Inc., the holding company for Garfield, didn't expect what was a botched product to sell well, which is why it was such a shock when the toy was so popular, it led to a wave of car break-ins where radios and purses were left behind and only the plush was stolen, sales climbing to a staggering $50 million.
Cool. Cool. Huh. Has someone ever got murdered for their Garfield J's? Are there Garfield J's? There probably is.
And what did Jim Davis and Paws Inc. do? We pulled all plush dolls off the shelves for 5 years. They didn't want Garfield to be a fad. They wanted to silently inject him into every part of our daily lives. where he could hide in plain sight, silently growing into one of the most dominant fictional characters on the planet. And here's the thing.
This Friday,
Well, it's John Wick. I'll let it slide.
John Wick franchise keeps fighting. Ballerina.
Cool. Shush.
They succeeded. What I'm about to tell you is not a joke. This is not some Space Jam 2-esque hijinks. This all happened over the course of making this video, an experience I call the Garfield phenomenon. It began in small ways. At first, I'd be watching a TV show and, oh, hey, there was Garfield. I'd look at Instagram and, my friends were posting about Garfield and, oh, a text. I guess Chris Pratt is playing Garfield in the new...
When did this video come out? 3 years ago? So what, 2022?
New Garfield movie. That's strange timing. Wait, why is Toby Fox talking about Garfield? And sexy goth Garfield began trending on Twitter? I began to feel slightly uneasy, so maybe I'll just try and relax and look at some gaming news and oh, hey! I guess Garfield's the new character in that Smash Nickelodeon fighting game. Isn't that grand? I'd been watching ReZero, which I did not like very much.
No fucking way to ReZero!
That Garfield appears in the second season, which just can't be true, and what the fuck? A friend sent me a picture of a mural in an old house, and there was Garfield staring at me with what I can only describe as some kind of
This is so cool.
all-knowing contempt. I was now doing whatever I could not to think about Garfield, and I agreed to watch the first episode of the new Dexter with my partner and...
Wow, yeah, I can only imagine. But I wants to call him Garfield.
What the fuck? What the fuck did he just say?
Everywhere I looked,
Garfield Sands!
I saw Garfield.
What the fuck is Garfield Griffith?
But why? Why was this happening now? Well, that answer would come to me, and it did so in the form of a phone call.
Hello.
Hi, son.
Oh, hey, ma'am. How's it going?
John, I know you're working on your video of Garfield at the moment, so guess what?
What a fucking name. What a title.
I found the picture of you with your Garfield.
Oh, ma'am, I don't think that was me. I was never actually that into Garfield.
I wonder how many photos my mom has of me and Garfield. Got you. He got you, wolf guy.
So, earlier in this video, when I said that I was never into Garfield...
You lied.
That was true. I don't remember this. I don't remember owning this massive Garfield doll, but that is me, and that is my mom, and this happened. I just don't remember. And this is when it started to click. That when you look for Garfield,
you'll find him.
You begin to find him everywhere. Even in the past.
The fuck?
This.
Okay, now I want to do it now. Now I'm gonna be on a hunt to look for fucking Garfield, dude. I'm gonna be on a hunt. I'm actually gonna look, dude. Well, imagine I find him on like fucking Marvel Rivals or some shit, dude. I don't think I'll find Garfield. I'll be chilling.
Is the Garfield phenomenon. Garfield is all around us, and he always has been.
Mike Pence.
I just never noticed, but my eyes are open.
The ball sack chin.
And now, so are yours. If an alien race dug through a ruined Earth, they would think we worshipped Garfield.
Fuck off.
I ordered 200 hand-forged knives to my dorm room and built a Wix website to sell them.
And they would be right. These are the 3 keys in unlocking what Garfield has become on the internet. A daily newspaper comic strip designed to be as simple and consumable as possible, but because of this becomes unintentionally malleable and recreatable, spreading edits of it online, one of which unknowingly touches off a bizarre meta-narrative of a man being overtaken by his own creation. That creation in time becoming an entity unto itself, one that has laid just outside the perception of man for 40 years and will remain there for infinitely more, transcending humanity itself. This is the bizarre modern reality of Garfield, and now that we understand it, we may enter the world of I'm Sorry Jon. On October 22nd, 2013,
No, I'm assuming this is Garfield, right?
a comic was uploaded to the internet that showed Jon Arbuckle awaking late one night, but something is wrong. Something is very wrong. His room is bathed in an eerie orange glow,
Ah, shit.
a
Did
strange
Garfield eat him?
material covering his walls, his furniture, and his entire home. He goes downstairs to try and discover the source of this problem, and upon entering the kitchen, he sees Garfield, his cat's strange swollen head bizarrely embedded in the wall, his skin spreading outward, covering every surface of his home.
I was so hungry.
As Jon
This voice actor is top notch. Good voice actor.
realizes
voice
with
actor.
horror, his entire home with him in it have been ingested by Garfield.
I'm sorry, Jon.
This was the beginning, and in the years to follow, more and more strange and frightening depictions of Garfield would begin to appear on the internet. Comics that looked normal at
Garfield.
first, only to take disturbing turns, with Garfield often portrayed as something alien and unknowable, one of the most popular of which was 2017's Gramfell, a darkly humorous webcomic whose early pages
Garfield, I'm lonely.
were focused on Jon's depression, met by an uncaring, nihilistic Gramfell. But as the comic continued, Gramfell began to reveal to Jon not only the inherent unhappiness of life, but the futility of his existence as a character trapped in a webcomic, breaking Jon down to his core components and trapping him in strange and surreal realities over and over, at one point even transforming the very webcomic of Gramfell itself into a different series called Jan and Gram, in which Jon gets to live out the cute and peaceful life he's always wanted before Jon is ripped from his serene dream and in the final page is forced to acknowledge that he is alone, and he always will be.
It's Maxwell, bruh.
What I find so fascinating about Gramfell
This is
it's
cool.
that same dynamic of Jon and Garfield, just brought to a cosmically nihilistic extreme.
That's cool as fuck. That's such a cool concept,
This is the
dude.
core concept of what would inform everything that was to come. But notably, Gramfell never felt truly frightening or disturbing because of the simple pastel cuteness of its aesthetic.
Yeah.
And if the horror of Garfield on the internet was going to truly solidify, it needed an aesthetic. And in the following year, it would get it. In 2018, an image would be uploaded to Instagram
Now,
from horror artist
this is
Real
Garfield.
Work.
Yep, I've
One
seen this one.
depicted
I've
a
seen this one. Yeah, I've seen this
horrifyingly
one.
bloated Garfield clutching a tiny, frightened Jon with the text,
Jon, I require lasagna.
Yeah, I remember this shit, dude.
Something about this image resonated with people, and it became wildly popular online, becoming the first in a series of 5 illustrations, each one depicting Garfield as a grotesque, swollen monstrosity.
This is so
His
cool.
form swimming between heaving mounds of flesh and sharp insect-like appendages. as he hunted Jon through his home. And while the sheer horror of seeing Garfield twisted into such nightmarish forms were a huge part of the power of these images, critically, they also captured the kind of hopelessness of the character of Jon Arbuckle, but channeled it into pure horror.
That's so
One illustration
cool.
showing Jon terrified and clutching a shotgun as a grotesque centipede-like Garfield emerges through the door behind him.
You think Jim Davis has seen these shits?
With text that reads,
"Bullets don't work, Jon."
The final image of this series depicting a gargantuan Garfield now towering over
I think that bullets did work, smartass. Look at your eye, little Nick Fury.
a helpless, terrified Jon as he whispers,
"The world is going to end, Jon."
With Asana, AI teammates are here to help level up your goals.
Fuck off.
Listen.
What?
Stress sweat stinks. That's why I use Secret Clinical Strength Deodorant. Secret is...
This is what y'all need, some deodorant. Y'all smell.
These images would rampage across the internet, being posted, reposted, and upvoted tens of thousands of times, and would become the blueprint for everything Garfield would become online. As different artists began to create their own interpretations of Burke's work, such as animator Lumpy Touch, who took Burke's illustrations and reimagined them
so
through stunning and
cool.
horrifying pixel art animations.
Bro, no, this is actually really cool as fuck. This is cool. The
Not
art's
only
phenomenal.
giving these still images a new horrifying dimension through movements, but also reframing them as a 2D survival
Video game,
horror
yeah.
video
That's
game.
cool as
Lumpy Touch
shit.
taking this concept even further later on, with both a first-person exploration recreation of the original I'm Sorry Jon comic, as well as creating a tutorial for his own fake Garfield survival horror game in which the player is hunted by one of 13 Gorefields, all based on the different zodiac signs. And what
I'm gonna play this.
I really love about this is you can see that kind of existential horror introduced by Gramfell, as well as the more grotesque body horror introduced by Burke, now being spliced with other mediums and genres of horror, and you could see this continue to evolve in other illustrations like those of artist Omega Black, who took the idea of Garfield horror and introduced a cosmic eldritch feel, like this image in which Garfield states,
"I no longer require eyes, Jon."
which I am pretty sure is a reference to the 1997 film Event Horizon, a sci-fi horror in which a group of astronauts board a lost starship that has returned from hell, featuring the infamous line,
"Where we're going, we won't need eyes to see."
Omega Black's other
They ran into Wolverine.
illustrations only expanding on this Lovecraftian style of Garfield horror, with a grotesque centipede-like Garfield stating,
"Heaven is a void of light, Jon."
or Jon being held captive by cloaked Odies before an impossibly massive multi-armed Garfield booms,
"I'm eternal, Jon."
Each new piece of Garfield fan art added to this idea of Garfield as a cosmic, horrifying being, sometimes referred to as Creepy Garfield or Gorefield. And this is what led to October 8th, 2018, and the creation of the subreddit
I'm sorry.
I'm Sorry Jon. There's nearly a cult-like feel to I'm Sorry Jon. Its title plaque reading, "Garfield has abandoned his limited form and he is beautiful. Surrender yourself to him and be saved." This is a community of nearly 800,000 people dedicated to bringing to life this new version
Yeah, this art is amazing. Hey, fuck the Gooner shit. Make cosmic horror.
of Garfield the internet has created, as well as his infinite torment of Jon Arbuckle. And maybe, like I did, you're thinking, no, Garfield's not evil. He's not trying to hurt Jon. It's not like that mystery number 2 category of Garfield joke is in fact humor based off Garfield's torment of Jon. But that's right.
shit.
At 18.8%, nearly 1 in 5 Garfield jokes center around Garfield causing Jon mental anguish. And it's not just that. Another variable I measured for was the amount of times Garfield showed empathy towards Jon or tried to comfort his suffering in any way. And across nearly 1,000 comics, that number was 0. So, in the same way Garfield minus Garfield reveals something real, if unintentional, about Garfield, the same is true in I'm Sorry Jon. Garfield has always been about a person trapped with a cold, nihilistic being that torments him, and it's been that way for 40 years. And all that I'm Sorry Jon does is bring that concept
to light into
a horrifying extreme. This is the reason I think so many pieces on I'm Sorry Jon have this odd kind of power to them. Their horror is rooted in being trapped with something awful and inescapable. But what's really fascinating about the
lo-fi girl,
the horror of I'm Sorry Jon, is how different artists have approached this idea in different ways.
It's cool. It's like comics, dude.
I like categorizing things, so I've identified what I think are 3 basic kinds of horror on I'm Sorry Jon. The first being physical Garfield horror. These are pieces that twist Garfield into strange and frightening creatures, sometimes into amalgamations of unsettling body horror, but more often swelling Garfield to such nightmarish proportions that there is no chance of Jon ever defeating, escaping, or even surviving these grotesque beasts Garfield has become. And what's interesting here is how many of these pieces evoke or even directly reference the FromSoft games Dark Souls and Bloodborne, which themselves—
yeah, it does give off Dark Soul vibes. It gives off Berserk vibes, dude.
Create a lot of their horror and emotion by forcing you into battles with these massive and horrifying creatures that feel impossible to overcome. It's that kind of physical hopelessness that these pieces create. And just like those games, the more extreme examples of this kind of Garfield horror carry a cosmic, nearly Lovecraftian feel, as Garfield is now so large, so impossible, that he begins to feel like some kind of terrible deity, a being of such immense power and scale that it throws into chaos our own sense of humanity's place in the universe, whether we really are the dominant species we've always assumed, or just dust in the wake of something much greater. I just read that line and I can't believe we're talking about fucking Garfield.
To be fair, you are scripting, buddy. You're cooking.
The second type of Garfield horror is more...
Mr. Wolf, do you like puzzles?
No.
I need your help.
Yeah.
Intimate and psychological. Here, it's less that Garfield is a physical threat as much as it is the subtle, insidious damage he's doing to Jon's mental state, sometimes in the form of an awful, malicious creature who constantly follows Jon and goads him.
That's just the average orange cat, dude.
Driving him to do terrible things, but sometimes as a delusional presence in Jon's own mind, a manifestation of his internal struggles, be they depression, addiction, or worse, in a way that feels similar to your Shinings, your Silent Hills, or reading your own comment section. These pieces are much rarer, but what I think's awesome about them is how they take that bleakness that's always been a part of Jon's character and express it through Garfield. There is a third—
I like the cosmic one more.
—type of Garfield horror, and these are my personal favorite.
Oh, wait, hold on.
Posts that focus on a more existential form of terror. The simplest examples of this are pieces that trap Jon in these
eternal
impossible and infinite liminal spaces where there is no escape and he will forever be haunted by
Hi, Jon, dude. He's just the loser that can't talk to girls. It's the average Switch user, dude. Like... This is what Jim Davis is all trying to say, dude. He knew Twitch and Kick was going to be a fucking thing.
Garfield, but other scenarios are more elaborate, like when even death itself can't release Jon from Garfield's grasp, showing Garfield as this immortal, unending being who will always return to plague Jon, or even the opposite, like in
like Void.
This one comic where Jon takes his own life to escape Garfield, only to be brought back to life by him.
That's cool.
So his suffering can continue. Other pieces are stranger and even more abstract, like showing Garfield as these grotesque physical parasites that have attached themselves to Jon and are feeding off him, while he is trapped in these strange, unending dream worlds. And I think where this particular kind of horror gets really powerful is when it's combined with the more psychological type of Garfield horror we just talked about, like Lumpy Touch's Relax Jon, which we mentioned earlier. And what I think is so great about this animation is it shows Jon returning home late one night at his most broken, his life now destroyed, having lost his job, Liz.
Jon, I'm really concerned about Garfield. We need to run more tests. Can you bring him by the office? I know money's tight since they dropped your cartoon, but I wouldn't change you. But I don't want to charge you anything.
And
don't make this about us.
Odie.
Did Odie just die?
And it's at this point when he's at his absolute lowest that he is most vulnerable to a being like Garfield, who offers Jon an escape from his miserable existence in the form of comfort, but in reality drags him into a frightening nightmare. And I love this so much because it is such a fantastic example of what Garfield has become on the internet. Garfield is despair. He's the part of Jon that makes him feel weak and insignificant, who pulls him down and traps him in realities dark and frightening. That is the core horror of Garfield and I'm Sorry Jon. It's interesting to note that this concept has only continued to evolve online in sub-communities like You're Welcome Jon, which is a more wholesome, if still very disturbing, relationship between Jon and a cosmically nightmarish Garfield, as
oh god, I'm scared.
well as I'm Really Sorry Jon, which I cannot even talk about.
I hope Gooners perish in hell.
If this video has any hope of staying monetized.
Skip!
By the way, this video is nearly definitely going to be demonetized, and so
more than likely, so is this one. It's fine.
So
we're in this together.
Have a Patreon. There's one tier. It's $1. So yeah. But hey, look, either way, I appreciate you watching. You can even see this very defined kind of Garfield horror being transplanted onto other fictional series with I'm Sorry Jon's occasional.
My fucking OBS crashed, but I'm back.
With your eyes, Bert. With your eyes. God, that's so good. I think it's interesting how, at least to me, they never quite carry the same level of impact or meaning as those based on Garfield. Not only because of how deeply
is there one of Oswald the Blue Octopus?
Rooted the horror of I'm Sorry Jon is in the very core of Garfield, but also in how, when taken with everything else we've talked about today, these pieces begin to transform what these characters are, and in particular, Jon Arbuckle.
Okay.
When I started this video, all Jon was this schlubby dude.
Schlubby.
But over time,
I've never heard someone use the word schlubby ever to make it fit, dude.
That started to change. I watched him go from this character with a very defined purpose and reason for existing to someone who loses that purpose and becomes to the world around them a pathetic joke. And it's like that experience causes this deep emptiness to well up inside them, a despair that makes life feel meaningless and impossible in a way that the Garfield comic can barely contain, till one day that despair begins to manifest as Garfield, an entity that traps Jon in this deep and horrifying delusion, warping every part of his reality.
All because he couldn't get a girlfriend, dude. Ladies? No,
this entity, with each passing day, grows
this is a perfect video on men's mental health, dude.
As Jon falls deeper into despair. And when I think of this late stage of Jon's existence, there's one artist in particular that comes to mind.
So Garfield's just a manifestation of all of Jon Arbuckle's turmoils and insecurities and worst parts about himself. This is peak writing.
Part of what makes Rojam's work so powerful and frightening is how intimately they seem to understand each particular kind of Garfield horror. Some pieces show Garfield as these massive, monstrous beasts whose mere existence conveys this horrifying physical futility. Others show Garfield as this gargantuan and grotesque parasite, as this insidious force that's been with Jon since the moment he was born, and for years has manipulated and contorted every part of his life.
Holy shit.
Draining Jon. Until finally, Garfield has grown so powerful that he's now more a god than anything else. So infinite, cosmic, and terrifying that he's become Jon's entire reality.
Motherfucker became the anti-spiral.
And Jon, now just a speck of dust, hopeless and terrified in the face of this thing that he created till the end of time.
I like how we gave Garfield a nose ring.
I think there's something really powerful about these images. The beautiful thing about horror is it lets us externalize the things that haunt us. And when I look at the work of Omega Black or Lumpy Touch or Rajam, what I see is a person struggling. Someone whose existence stopped making sense a long time ago, and who's just trapped in this horrifying distortion of what their life should be. And I think there's something very human about that.
Ha! So is that a beautiful analogy about how fucking Jon Arbuckle represents and or Garfield represents all the internal turmoils that regard humanity of their insecurities? We got a fucking civilization where the fuck on the meta quest. I could give less of a fuck. Damn, man. Long ass fucking facial hair, bitch. Fuck off.
It's citrusy sweet.
Jesus fuck.
And sour. Join the crawl. Scoop it all. Baskin Robbins. Seize the yay.
Yay. Seize the yay. Fuck yay.
When I think back to the very worst periods of my life, what comes to me
fucking Garfield suit, dude,
is this feeling of being trapped in my own mind, that there is something in me that is distorting how I see the world and the people around me and everything, and it's horrible. It's a nightmare. And I think the hardest part of it is the feeling that it's never going to end, that the way you feel in those moments is how you will feel for the rest of your life. Yeah. And if you've ever struggled mentally or emotionally, you know that fear. And it is that fear that I've never seen visualized better than in fucking Garfield fan art. We all want to be Garfield, but we all are Jon Arbuckle.
I don't know about we. Yes, Hoodydude, we are all Jon. Okay.
And the thing is, those bad times, they do never last.
No.
They do end. And I think that's why I find this final piece...
No, unless you're a Hoodydude hater. If you're a Hoodydude hater, those bad times never end.
So hopeful.
Wait, what?
The piece is done in Rajam's traditional pen and ink style, but with a subtlety that makes it feel nearly carved from stone. And it shows a demonic Garfield lying, defeated and broken, a sandaled foot pinning him to the ground, which belongs to an angelic Jon Arbuckle.
What?
Tears rolling down his face, his wings raised in this just glorious arc. And it's like
After everything we've watched Jon go through, after all the loneliness, the depression, the complete loss of his identity, leading to the dissolution of his reality into this infinite, abject nightmare, after all that,
it's still you.
Somehow, he's made it to this
other side.
He's taken his life back from the shit that haunts him, and it's fucking beautiful. And maybe this won't last. Maybe there's still darker times ahead.
Oh no, there always is. But the thing about darker times is that they never last. Or depends on how you look at it.
But it doesn't matter. Because in this moment, he's okay.
Oh.
Jon's okay.
So peak.
And look, I get it. I get that having this strong an emotional reaction to what is most certainly a Garfield shitpost is ridiculous. But goddamn,
I'm emotional right now. I am screaming and edging as we speak.
That is what I do here.
No, this is goated. Unironically, this is peak as
I
fuck.
take my hope where I can get it.
Talk that sock!
The title of this piece being The Forgiveness of Jon. I put the costume back on.
Yeah, we noticed. It's cool though. Looks fly.
Because I was worried that this part might be too heavy without it. And
I think someone cried watching this video. They did. It was me.
And also, I paid a lot of money for it. What makes The Forgiveness of Jon so powerful to me is that in isolation, it is an amazing piece of art and a real technical achievement. But when taken with everything else we've spoken about this video, it becomes the concluding chapter of a gigantic meta-narrative that is formed around Jon Arbuckle. And again, if I was the only person who saw that, there wouldn't be a story here.
Yeah.
The Forgiveness of Jon being the third most popular post on r/I'm Sorry Jon of all time, as well as adorning its front page. And I think it's awesome that so many people's individual works come together to pull such an incredible story out of something as simple as a daily comic strip about a cat who likes lasagna. This is what I love about fandoms. When you stare at them for long enough, these beautiful and strange stories start to emerge that are distorted and honest and amazing.
You can do away with the Rule 34 shit, I'm not gonna lie. But the rest is fucking amazing.
And whatever else you want to say about the nightmare of the modern day internet and social media, I'm glad that those stories have a place to exist. I think that's pretty cool.
It is very cool. This is peak as fuck.
Friends, thank you for joining me today.
So, Jon, what we learned today, fellas, is that Garfield is a manifestation of everyone, or not everyone, a representation and symbolizes everyone's innate insecurities, fears, and disgusts and anguish. We learned a lot today, fellas. We learned that Jon is also the embodiment of the indomitable human spirit and human fucking will. That was good. But, fellas, this is a long ass video. I'm tired as fuck. It's like 3 a.m. and it's like 3 a.m. I am tired as fuck. But fellas, that's wrap up today's video. But if you liked the video, like the video. If you don't like the video, I don't give a fuck. Suck my nuts. But yeah, fellas, that's wrap up today's video. But if you liked the video, like the video, I don't give a fuck. Shout out Super Eye Patch for all the effort that went into this shit, bruh. Golly, this was fucking amazing. This is amazing. Support these original creators, bro. Shout out everyone involved with this, bro. Every fucking artist, every fucking bit of piece of research. Everyone deserves credit except the Gooners. I hope the Gooners can go fuck themselves. But fellas, that's gonna wrap up today's video. If you want to chat to anything more specific, let me know in the comments below. I'm gonna go to sleep. Bye!